6. Walking in the shadow of the dragon. The large-scale ooze monster in the tomb of Ironbeard was exploded by the magic power of the cursed evil weapon, and Blake was lucky to find a strange leather bag full of mucus in the wreckage of the ooze monster. This leather bag looks unusual. Especially after Blake cleaned it, it was even more beautiful. A very small rucksack that can be worn on a belt, just like a fanny pack. It should be made of some kind of fine leather, sewn with a shiny thread. Blake guessed that it should be a high-grade item such as rune thread or magic thread used by mages. On the top of the small rucksack, there is a drawstring that can be tightened or pulled open. But if it's just pretty, this thing isn't worth getting Blake so excited about. It's a magic item. After Blake put it on the belt he pulled from the orcs, an entry 4 magic weave bag appeared in the equipment slot of the character card. Its actual capacity is much larger than its volume looks. Maybe the mages have used magical magics such as extension spells on it. Blake threw all his belongings in. The backpack was still not full, and it already had something in it. Some food that hasn't gone bad after I don't know how long it's been, meat and a full case of dwarven ale. A pile of shiny gold coins. There are about 100 pieces. This magic pattern backpack should belong to the loot of a blood ring orc who looted in Azeroth, but in the end, it was cheap for the skeleton man Blake. Speaking of which, if I remember correctly, 18 years later, in the tomb of Ironbeard, there is a dwarf herbalist's quest chain, and the final reward is also a magic bag. Blake rubbed his chin and thought to himself. Could it be that the reward bag that the dwarf gave me at that time was the one I found now? No way. Of course, it was a pleasant surprise to get the magic backpack. Blake immediately threw the magic suitcase into the backpack. It was too dazzling to carry such dangerous things on him. He calmed down and began to look at another magic item he found in the wreckage of the ooze monster. This thing is rather weird. Its appearance is like a piece of rotten wood, gray-black, as long as the forearm, the top is thicker than the end, and there is a circle of small frosted balls inlaid. Other than that, there is nothing to praise. The only strange thing is that this thing is heavy to start, and by the standard of a weapon, the balance is excellent. Blake grabbed it in his hand and waved it back and forth. It feels very good. He glanced at the equipment column of the character card again, and found that this thing was really regarded as a weapon, and the name made him miss it very much. Werther's third leg. Excellent quality. Strengthened heavy blows. Weakly crushed. Well, the third leg. This thing, indeed, is quite strange in every sense. It was so weird that Blake didn't dare to think about it. But in fact, this thing is actually not as evil as he thought. While sorting out the bones of the tomb on the second floor, he found some small steels in the tomb that recorded the life of the deceased. There is a steel in it that belongs to a dwarf named Werther. According to the steel, Werther fought for the Bronzebeard family in the Battle of the Three Hammers and lost his left leg in grim battle. So he made himself another leg. Powerful functions not only can be used to open beer/beat eggs/make kitchen utensils, but also can be used to open a human brain after losing a gamble. This thing must be good for sap. Blake swung Werther's leg in his hand, and then put it on his belt, intending to use this fine weapon as his main weapon. As for the Murloc knife, which was full of blood of Murlocs and orcs, it would not be wasted. It happened to be used as a flying knife. In the past 2 days of battle, he has practiced his lethal throwing skills to the point of proficient. Within 10 meters, he can shoot wherever he wants. And after this evil big ooze monster exploded, it brought a lot of experience to Blake, and he allotted the experience to the thief class. Let that little experience bar break through level 9. It was only a third of the way to level 10. Let's go, Bumblebee, let's work our way up to level 10 before tomorrow morning. Blake finally paid his respects to the simple tombstone on the second floor of Ironbeard's tomb. He asked these dwarf souls to give him good luck, and then, in the croak of the little Murlocs, he put on the gray-black hunting cloak of the Blood Ring orcs, left the tomb of Ironbeard, and continued to walk northeast. Soon, he discovered the second Blood Ring orc camp, and like the camp at Ironbeard's tomb, there were only a few old, weak and sick orcs guarding it. Blake whistled and grabbed Werther's leg from his waist. Said softly, "Go on, Werther, do your best, okay?" That night, Blake killed the last escaped old orc with a poison-throwing knife a few miles away from the dwarf town of Dun Motor, which was occupied by orcs. After emptying the third camp he encountered, he was stabbed in the back of the one-armed old orc, fell to the ground, and took his last breath, and the familiar heat rushed into Blake's body. He didn't care to search the camp, rubbed his hands, and was looking forward to assigning this experience to the thief class again, and then, watching with anticipation, the class's experience bar took a step forward. Finally jumped from level 9 to level 10. The upgrade process was not as exaggerated as he imagined, but he just felt a flash of inspiration in his heart. Through sneak attack and assassination by hiding in the dark for the past few days, Blake has already gained his own understanding of the tiptoe walking skills. It will be like accumulating thin hair, and the last layer of window paper will be pierced. He looked around. The dark night is like the best disguise. Gently put a shadow coat on him, he can feel the shadow that he could see but couldn't touch. He felt a faint wisp of knowledge in the darkness opening to him. That is the secret that belongs to the shadows. Blake stood up, took a deep breath, closed his eyes, followed the feeling in his heart, took a step back, and learned to touch the invisible shadow. It was like putting the king's invisible new clothes on him gently, like a cloak. He opened his eyes and raised his hands. On the thin and slender fingers, an inaudible black shadow was flowing, covering every part of the palm and every part of the body. Shadow reached out to the beginner. Blake took that hand and embraced it without reservation. Then the shadow gave him the blessing of strength, allowing him to live in the darkness. Blake's heart was full of joy. This was the first commendable gift he had obtained in this magical world with his own hands. He reached out and touched his forehead, and the character card was called out. In the talent column, there was already a talent of shadow walking, and there was also a sneak skill in the skill column. It is the foundation of thieves, assassins, and stalkers. It is good at stunts. A skilled thief can even disappear silently under the gaze of hundreds of people in broad daylight. And block all his breath, as if escaping into the shadows and disappearing into the world. That is the realm that Blake can't reach now. But it doesn't matter, he still has enough time to learn these shadow ways. Shoo. Blake's movements were a little bigger, tearing the still thin shadow coat on his body, making his first sneak a failure, and his thin body reappeared in the night camp. But he was not annoyed, but crouched on the ground with a smile on his face, and began to search for the good things of a few orcs. There was no hope at all. These old, weak, sick and disabled people who were left behind in the wetlands couldn't possibly hide anything good, but surprises were surprises, and they came without warning. In the pocket of an orc wounded soldier with a broken leg, Black found a pair of animal skin wrist. Very clan style. After wearing it on the wrist, there are also new entries in the equipment slot. Forest bracers, excellent quality. Weak protection. With just one entry, it is equivalent to none, and it is slightly tougher than ordinary leather armor, which made Blake helplessly curl his lips. Now, he can be considered to have understood some equipment characteristics. The more entries, the better. For a boutique weapon like Werther's leg, the description on the entry is enhanced, which must be more powerful than weak. But things of good quality are so rare. If you want to get lucky and find such excellent equipment as Werther's legs, you have to wait until the year of the monkey. And Blake's current outfit is also quite interesting. The leather armor on his body was plucked from orcs. Because of the curse, he became like a thin bamboo pole, so the size of the leather armor did not fit. The trousers are hunting leather pants, short style, with 2 bare legs, which does not affect the movement, and the leather boots on the feet are picked up from the Murloc village. The size is just right, and it can protect the delicate toes. She wears a turban on the top of her head, and she looks like an Arab. This mix and match style is not to mention whether it is beautiful or not. Now is not the time to be particular. He found a few more bottles of blood ring poison in the camp, and then poisoned the dagger and dagger again. Werther's legs were no longer needed. This thing is a blunt weapon. During a sneak attack, knocking down on the head will either cause a coma or split the skull. The meaning of poisoning is really not great. Then, the next step is done modder. Taking advantage of the darkness, Blake went into stealth and walked tiptoe out of the camp. He hid in the shadows and looked at the end of his horizon, where he could vaguely see a small town in a valley. A typical dwarf style, built on a mountain. There were very few buildings exposed on the surface, but the town was also lit with lights, and the orcs who were patrolling rode behind the wolf, roaring out of the town and rushing further north. If you can kill all the orcs in this town. Blake licked his lips. A genius idea came to mind. If you can really do it, you can kill all the 400 orcs in the town of Dunmod, then your thief class is estimated to be able to rise all the way to level 15, or even level 20. But thinking about it, I know it's impossible. The people stationed there are not stragglers, the old and the sick, the real blood ring elites, and the orc war wolves with keen sense of smell and hearing are domesticated. I'm afraid that Black will be discovered before he gets close, and then be cut into pieces by the berserk orcs. In this real world, there is no such thing as level crushing and instant killing. He looked at Dan Mott a few times and finally retreated with regret. He planned to go to other places and find a few blood ring camps to bully the old, the weak, the sick and the sick. It's best to draw a small team of elite orcs to check, and then use the method of assassinating them one by one to grind them to death. In other words, elite orcs should be able to drop some good goods. Blake thought so. He glanced at his character card again. He found pessimistically that the warrior class had dropped by one more level, and had already dropped to level 3. At this rate, he could stay in the wetlands for 3 or 4 days at most, so he had to hurry to Orthy Highlands to find a priest to dispel the curse. But just 10 minutes after Black left Dunmotter, he came to a hilly highland and planned to take a nap, but the little murloc in his arms suddenly croaked. Bumblebee shivered and hid in Black's arms, pointing his finger at the sky and covering his eyes with his other hand. Apparently frightened by something. Black followed the claws of the little fish man, and the next moment was also startled. Above the quiet sky of the wetlands, under the stars, a huge black shadow was spreading its wings and flying towards the earthy highlands. It was far away and flew very high. Blake could only vaguely see a shadow, but that thing was at least 30 meters long. Although Blake didn't need to breathe in the form of the undead curse, he instinctively held his breath for a moment, and covered the mouth of the little murloc screaming in his arms. That is a dragon.